In other words, I was stuck with my mother and surrogate daddy for at least a few more years. And now I was stuck serving all my time in this lame-ass town called Flocksdale. "Are you sure anyone really lives here?" I asked, yanking my earbuds out. My mother shot me a death glare, and my stepdad ignored my comment. He'd grown up here in this dump, and I knew insulting his alma mater would get under his skin. But getting under his skin was turning out to be one of my favorite pastimes. I twisted my hair in a tight bun and started packing up my book and iPod into my messenger bag. It was all I'd brought, besides my duffel bag containing a few outfits. Everything else was coming by U-Haul. I didn't care about my stuff. It was my friends and school I worried about leaving behind. I was relieved to see lights up ahead, illuminating a McDonald's and CVS as we entered the heart of town. So there is civilization here, I thought wearily. More businesses, a grocery store, diner, coffee shop, and a badass-looking used bookstore. Then the stores faded away, and we entered a cluster of residential houses and neighborhoods. The houses were small and close together, mostly shotguns. But then they got larger and grander as we got further from town. "We're getting close. It's on the river," George said, his voice taking on an excited, boyish tone. I knew we were getting close to the water because the houses were taking on a strange quality. Some of them were sitting up high on stilts. I'd never seen anything like it. "I guess they're worried about floods here," I remarked softly. I had to admit, the houses looked pretty cool, sitting up high on solid wooden beams, like they were too cool to hang on the ground with the rest of the houses. "Yeah, sometimes the river gets high around here, but there hasn't been a major flood in 40 years, my mom said, answering for George. But then she said, "Nearly 30 houses and businesses were torn down and rebuilt. They built smarter the second time around, preparing for floods. But we won't have to worry about that." Rolling down the window, I leaned my head out, sucking in deep breaths of damp July air. Why did they tear them down? And who were they? I wanted to ask, but then I could almost hear water. There it was, rolling murky water with steaming pipes from a nuclear plant on the other side of the river. A huge sea of nothing but water, and more nothingness beyond it. An old metal walking bridge glittered in the distance. "It's down here," George nearly whispered, taking a turn onto Clemens Street. There were nearly 6 houses on both sides of the street, all built on stilts. But at the end was a gigantic Victorian home, its own flood wall behind it, sitting right on the river. It towered in the black night sky, moonlight dancing crazily on the rough waters in the background. It was beautiful in an eerie sort of way, and as we pulled up in front of it, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand upright. Could it be the House of Horrors? That's right, I did my research on this place. The town of Flocksdale had a history, a nasty, evil sort of history. Nearly 20 years ago, a deranged family ran some sort of trafficking drug ring. The bodies of nearly 40 young girls were found buried in the crawl spaces, basements, and backyards of the townspeople involved in the operation. The townspeople of Flocksdale. All of the perpetrators were either apprehended or dead, but it still gave me the creeps. I'd read everything I could find on the internet about the murders. In some of the write-ups, I'd read about the description of the main house used in the kidnappings and subsequent killings. An old, creepy Victorian. A description that seemed to fit this one. Surely there were other Victorian homes in this town, right? I tried to tell my mom and even George about it, but George ignored me and my mom said, "Every town has history and crime is everywhere, Marianna. George grew up there, so it must be all right." Yeah, that made me feel a whole hell of a lot better. George parked the SUV in a concrete driveway out front of the house. I made no attempt to get out. I stared up at this beautiful monster of a house, wondering what was in store for me in this creepy little town with its even creepier history.